don't lose hope, because when you make your voice heard, change can actually happen, and today's story is an example of that, because our good friends, the Electronic Artists, just lost to their players. You see, EA tried to take away player options in one of their most successful games, and then sell those options back to people as microtransactions, and in some cases, $100 worth. Players rebelled, and players have actually won, because EA has pulled the payments. But here's the thing, even as EA capitulates, they are leaving the door open to try it again, and insiders are suggesting that this level of monetization is EA's new plan across all of their games, and that is of course all happening as the Saudi deal leaves them scrambling to clear $20 billion worth of debt. And you know what? It feels like it's been a while since we've had a good old-fashioned egregious monetization story. I'm almost nostalgic, and it's nice to know we can always rely on EA to provide. The game that sparked this off is a huge one. It's EA College Football. Now, this was relaunched in 2024, and when it did, it became one of the fastest-selling sports games of all time, and now, as of 2026, it is on PC for the first time as well, all as EA want to expand their market. This game is big money for EA, but clearly they want more. Now, players reckon that the game itself is actually better than ever. That is good news, but if you look at Steam, you see it's sitting there at a mere 38%. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our clue. And here's the weird thing, it's not kickback or anger over Ultimate Team. Ultimate Team, of course, being EA's perennial gambling mode and money printer. No, these are new controversies in college football single-player modes. Dynasty, which lets you play as a coach, effectively running a football manager across the whole season, and then Road to Glory, where you basically track one player that you customize. And the way these work is the Dynasty is hybrid, it's part single-player, part online, and then Road to Glory is purely single-player. But either way, these are modes that players sink serious amounts of time into. As we all know, if there's a time sink, that's an opportunity to do some upselling. Now at launch, players noticed something a little bit curious. There was a familiar feature that was actually missing. You see, previously, you could set your progression speed in these modes with a slider. Basically, they were XP adjusters that would let you get to the end game faster. Just that in this version of the game, those were gone. Now, some analysis suggested that you would need days worth of playtime to reach the top level, and because of that, I think you can already see where this story's going. In place of what used to be free, players found the option to pay for faster progression, and I would say this is pay to win because one of those modes is played against other people. Now the way it works is you could buy experience levels individually or jump straight to max level via college football points, and it turns out that doing that for a coach in the online shared mode right off the bat would cost you about $100. So that is immediately quite bad. And sure, the person running the league could disable them, but overall, it's a really bad situation, and that's the only option that exists for progression where there used to be many. Players quite literally lost granular options, and in return for that, they gained purchase opportunities. Now, this is not necessarily unexpected for EA, especially their sports division, but what if I told you it then gets worse? So, the focal point for this whole controversy was a college football YouTuber called Bordeaux. His early videos highlighted the issue and got people to start talking. The hashtag CFB Play Don't Pay sprang up from that work as well, and a lot of people got behind it. Now, he explained that EA had hidden all of these microtransactions from the pre-launch events and the marketing, and even from those in the marketing partner program. And what he said about it was quite predictable. You can't just sneak microtransactions in, have us creators super excited to play the game, say nothing about it at Chicago, and then just expect it to be cool. Yeah. Now this blew up. Many other creators called out the same points. Bad reviews and social media sentiment eventually then forced EA to act. We got a statement, we got a promise of change. And I guess here's where it is quite interesting. This is obviously them trying to juice up the money, and we will talk very soon in this video about why EA desperately needs to juice up the money that they are bringing in. So, to try and remedy the situation, though, they added new modifiers for coach XP speed in Dynasty mode, letting you play with a 1.25 or 1.5x XP modifier. Though for what it's worth, Bordeaux pointed out that this was weaker than it seemed because last year's sliders were faster. And the thing is, that was only one of the modes. Road to Glory, the other mode, got no such compromise. The sliders didn't return, and the funny thing is the one toggle that EA did flag, which would make Road to Glory easier, would also cause your XP gain to drop. So I'm not feeling great, of course, in the single-player offline mode, where it did feel that those balance concerns shouldn't really be much of a concern. So unsurprisingly, the pushback continued, and after several more days of controversy, EA finally capitulated. And of course that means they put out a statement in social media, one about how they missed the mark. And honestly, it does read quite funny. Here's what they said. This was added independent of deeper mode progression with the aim to give players more choice. But what you've said is they're not adding the value we intended. Yeah, that was the problem. It's not that they stripped away a feature that used to exist and then sold it back to you. No, it's that it just didn't give you the value that they, EA, the Electronic Artists, intended. What a scummy statement. Okay, so the paid progression has now been pulled, and because of that, players and influencers are basically thrilled. They kicked up a big stink, and they actually got what they wanted. But the progression modifying sliders that used to be there for free are not yet back, and the language of that apology has very much got people worried about a lot more than just sports games. And that is because this story has happened in a context, as I teased earlier, context of $20 billion of debt. Okay, we've covered the American football story, now it's the overall EA story. So when this first blew up, Insider Gaming's Mike Straw reached out to his sources inside EA. They suggested that the devs were actually livid, and livid is a quote from his reporting. So the devs are livid, and they fully expected this level of pushback. So then there's an obvious question. Why would you push ahead with an obviously deeply unpopular thing that's probably going to be so unpopular there's a decent chance you'll feel like you've got to revert it? Well, it's pretty simple. These payments were just one piece of an EA-wide expansion of monetization. And for some more color in that, here's what Insider Gaming had to say. Sources tell me that EA has been looking at ways to add more monetization options to all of the games and franchises in its portfolio, whether it be College Football 27 in its single-player mode, UFC 6, which will have paid expansions for the first time, Madden 27, which will have more monetization as well, or EAFC with its upcoming The Grounds mode. Everything is on the table regarding how EA is preparing to pay off that new debt. Even future single-player only titles from EA will have more monetization options implemented. I'll tell you what, that certainly makes me think, whenever that Mass Effect game finally comes into existence, how the hell are they going to put microtransactions in the damn thing? But that's all the future, and we've actually seen fresh versions of this stuff happening already. As an example, EA announced that they'll soon be selling old Battlefield skins in Battlefield 6, so recycling some purchase opportunities. Same goes with The Sims as well. The UGC store is going to open up, and within that store, EA will take % of all creator revenue on that platform. Now, in a way, right, this could just seem absurd. I mean, EA just announced $8 billion in bookings for the last financial year. Surely their greed has to have limits. Well, greed is not the only thing driving this. Debt is the thing driving this, and it's debt to the tune of $20 billion. And the reason why is simple. The Saudi-led purchase of EA is actually going to close within the next month or so. Now, what that amounts to is $50 billion, with $20 billion coming in the form of loans leveraged into debt. So yes, it is a good old leveraged buyout. Now, that debt is going to be handed to EA, and EA will be told to clear that debt. Now, you can't just clear that debt with just bookings, you obviously need profits. Now let's get into that. EA's income last year was only $887 million, and that was one of their best years ever. So what that means is that if they were able to turn around and pay all of that profit, right, put all of that into the debt, it would take 23 years to clear the debt. The numbers barely add up, and that does mean that something has to change. So, when a company's carrying that much debt, one of the only ways out is, funny enough, to generate a profit, to start paying down that debt. Now, what they can do to generate a profit is, of course, cut staff and projects. They can lower their spending. And likely, we can expect a grand restructuring of EA. Honestly, something fairly similar to what Xbox has just accomplished. All, of course, so that the money that they do earn is able to go further and, deal with that debt. But you can only cut so much. They also need to earn more. Now, earning more in the games business does not necessarily mean making more video games. As an example, EA already makes twice as much from live services as they do from the sales of games. So whenever you think of EA and you maybe think, oh, I'd like a new Mass Effect game, if it's good, that is, barely relevant to EA. everything for them is live services. So if you were to imagine that new Mass Effect game appears and maybe within 2 months it sells 6 million units, or something like that that's fairly good, that would still barely be relevant to the scale of numbers we're talking about here, especially ran over years. That's why monetization of live service is absolutely their plan. And basically, they want that to go up. So expect, if it's an EA game that you're playing, that it will have, well, more asks for your money. And of course, as Mike Straw's sources suggested, that's even going to include microtransactions being there in single-player games. So the upshot of this, then, is that the Saudi-led deal is the sort of thing that, well, obviously none of us really asked for. It's probably going to get some shareholders a shitload of money, but for the actual developers at EA, it is bad. For the players of EA games, it is bad. But EA needs to double down, and the plan for that $20 billion problem is to make the problem yours, and to do so in ways that you've never paid before. They are going to find new ways to monetize your time. That's just what we should expect, and the big question is, will the market actually punish them for becoming more egregious? I certainly hope it does. And speaking of the market punishing people, well, Tim Sweeney's been having a bit of a chat online. It's sparked off a whole big debate, and you can find out all about it in the next video.